All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Wellness Wednesday as we start the new year off in 2024. We always are so excited to bring you so many great topics. Every time we talk about another health topic, and we're always excited about what we're sharing with you. If you're not familiar with me, my name is Marilee Marasich, and I've been a wellness advocate now for about 16 years. And it's kind of interesting what brings us all to the awareness of the importance of health. For me, it was a own personal health crisis that made me realize the importance of being proactive in my own health and really chasing root cause, getting down to what the heart of the matter was for my health and branching out of that, really just an awareness and a passion for helping other people. Um, that's why we put Wellness Wednesday together. And if you've joined us on Wellness Wednesday, you know that we say this all the time: in order to get well, fix the cell. In order to age well, fix the cell. In order to be well, fix the cell. So every week we're interviewing other health and wellness experts as they bring their knowledge with different topics to the table. And I am super excited about this topic tonight. I get the chance to interview a good friend of mine, Dr. Sean McKee. And we are going to be talking about the topic of mitochondria and the brain and brain energy, and even how that affects just not overall health, but mental health as well. So I think this is a really important topic. And just preparing for it, there's a lot of information that's kind of cutting edge out there about it. And I know where Sean's going to go with this, and I'm excited for you all to learn even more. Um, I'm actually, let me read for you the bio of Dr. Sean McKee. She's just one of the most impressive people. I've heard her speak many times, and she always honestly blows me away. This girl is a wealth of knowledge. But Dr. Sean McKee is a board certified neuroradiologist and the founder of the Vitality MD. She's married to a gastroenterologist, and I love her husband, John. He's an absolute hoot. She has two adult sons and four dogs, crazy happy dogs. I love that. But get this, you guys. She's also a two-time 140.6-mile Ironman triathlete, a marathoner, and an ultra marathoner. And as I mentioned, truly one of the most brilliant people that I know. So it's an honor, Sean, to have you join us tonight, as always. She's been here before and always brings a wealth of information. So, Sean, I know before we jump into our topic, I think you kind of have a fascinating health journey yourself and what brought you into the awareness of just all things, activation. But I want you to give us a quick lowdown. What is your story?
Oh my goodness, Marilee, thank you for that question. As a neuroradiologist, I was the, reader of the MRI that your doctor ordered for you when you had a headache. Okay. My name was at the bottom of the report. You didn't meet me, but I examined your brain thoroughly and determined, no, you don't have a meningioma, or yes, you've got some edema in your white matter, or you've got a contusion, that kind of thing. And it's a very exhausting kind of a profession, because you have to be so thorough. You're the only one really looking on the inside, and you're there to answer the doctor's questions. You're kind of like the Sherlock Holmes for the neurologist, who, the neurologist collects the symptoms, examines the patient, comes up with their potential diagnoses, but then the answer is really, my purview. So in doing so, and you read about my athletic endeavors as well. You might imagine I was burning the candle at all 12 ends, and we're talking about mitochondria, the energy powerhouse of the cell. And what ended up happening with me is I ran out of energy. I was, I think I, overwhelmed my body's ability to adapt and put out the fires of, inflammation and constant stress. And so that's how I kind of came to LifeVantage. My husband sweetly suggested that I go to see a doctor to see if I was maybe low in, thyroid or magnesium or some hormones. And, he was right. She diagnosed me as having deficiencies in those various minerals and hormones, and put me on a whole regimen of, she called it her anti-aging cocktail, but I really didn't feel any better. And then went to see her for my follow-up, and that's when she told me about this. She said there is something that gets to the root cause of why you feel like that. What, it addresses something called oxidative stress, and I happen to know what that was because my coach called me the oxidizer, because I would do a CrossFit class before work, and then I would go run 12 miles. Then I would go to work, so I was definitely overtaxing my mitochondria, and that's thank goodness I did, because otherwise I wouldn't have found out about what we have.
Well, honestly, sometimes it is a blessing in disguise to just experience something personally and then see it on the other side of things. So we're thrilled that you're here. And I know with that just brings a wealth of knowledge as well. So, Sean, I think this is a really important topic about mitochondria and brain health. And I'm just going to jump right in if I can, just by asking you a few questions. And let's start with this. What exactly are mitochondria and why are they important for brain health?
Well, they're actually fascinating little creatures. We call them organelles, because they are part of the cell. Organs, we have organs in our body, but our cells have little mini organs called organelles. And as you know, they're called the powerhouses of the cells, but they're so much more than that. They do so much more than produce quote unquote energy. They're unique in many ways. One is that they have their very own DNA, separate from your nuclear DNA. And this DNA is solely derived from your mother. It comes from the maternal line. So when the sperm gets into the egg, the mitochondria are concentrated in the tail, because that's how they swim. And then once they get into the egg, the egg destroys this sperm's mitochondrial DNA. So all of your mitochondrial DNA comes from your mother. The DNA inside the mitochondria codes for, number one, the proteins that actually make the DNA, that make the ATP, but they also code for some antioxidant proteins that help protect against the damage that comes from making energy, just like a power plant that makes power, an energy plant. There's a byproduct, which is pollution. Well, in the mitochondria, the byproduct is free radicals, and those free radicals actually damage the mitochondria. They damage the mitochondrial DNA. They damage the mitochondrial membranes. And so that's going to make them not function well. The reason that the mitochondria are so important in the brain is the brain is an incredibly energy dependent organ. It's only 2% of our body weight, but it consumes 20 to 25% of our body's total energy. And this energy is produced by your mitochondria. So it's used for many functions in the brain, maintaining something called the electrical potential of the neurons. That's how neuronal signals are transmitted from one nerve cell to the next. It actually helps, the mitochondria actually help synthesize neurotransmitters. Those are the chemicals that tell the nerves what to do. They go from one nerve to the next, acetylcholine, those kind of things. And they actually help form new connections, brain connections between neurons. That's how memories are made and learning happens. So that is all incredibly energy intensive. They're not just static power generators. They're actually dynamic. They move within the neurons. They move to the areas where energy demand is the highest, like the ends of the neurons called synaptic terminals. That's the sites for neuronal connection. The mitochondria themselves can elongate. They can join together with other mitochondria, and they adapt to their environment. The health and function of your brain's mitochondria affect everything from basic neuronal cellular metabolism, just how they live and produce energy, to advanced brain functions such as neuroplasticity. We used to think the brain was static and it couldn't change, and the nerves were just the ones you were born with. But now we know the brain can actually grow and adapt and change throughout life in response to the stressors. When your mitochondria work well, they produce ATP, which is, little energy packets. And they do it through a process called oxidative phosphorylation, where electrons are moved through the mitochondrial membranes in a series of steps, and the brain functions well. But if the mitochondria are damaged, that can lead to a whole host of problems, and insufficient energy production happens. That impairs the brain's function. Things happen like cognitive decline, memory issues, mood disturbances, brain fog, and that's why maintaining healthy mitochondria are so crucial for the brain's health.
Well, it's really true. And some of the things that I've been listening to is like, what are the things that are affected? It's not just brain fog, but people that deal with maybe high levels of stress, anxiety, depression, just that cognitive function where that can very much be declined. And I've experienced this a little, and I don't know that I've ever shared this on a Wellness Wednesday before, but before, earlier in my 20s, the health crisis really that I had gone through early on started in my gut. It was following a tooth infection with a lot of rounds of antibiotics, wiped out my microbiome. But I found myself in a real deep depression. And it was a real interesting process of trying to overcome that, get the body healthy again. But I have walked through that and dealt with the anxiety that goes along with that. So it's a very real thing. We know that. But what you're sharing is that it is helpful, and it's helpful to know that our brains can improve, our bodies can improve. We can increase the mitochondria, the healthy mitochondria, to help improve those things. So you might have covered this, but let me ask the question on the nose. How do mitochondria affect cognitive function, like mood, like mental well-being, memory, and just concentration in general?
Well, we're all energetic, we're energetic beings, and energy is, the key. In fact, if you have a brain in a lab, in a brain outside the body, it's preserved in formaldehyde, it's in a jar, everything's intact. The white matter pathways are intact. The cells are intact. You can see the axons, you can see the dendrites, you can see the nerve cells. You can even the DNA is intact. The thing that makes that brain different from the brain inside your head is energy. The mitochondria producing the energy. That is what makes a live brain different from a dead brain. That's the only thing, is the energy. So the mitochondria are producing that energy. And the other thing they do is they actually maintain something called calcium homeostasis. Calcium is involved in signaling in that whole electron transport chain, and it is vital for regulating the synapse, what happens at the end of the nerve cell with regard to a neurotransmitter being released or not. And when neurotransmitters are released, that determines your thoughts. Acetylcholine, norepinephrine, all these things are happening in your brain, which determine your mood, your energy, whether you really feel like concentrating or not. And so when your mitochondria are not functioning well, that actually creates brain fog. It can create depression. Depression is just low energy, low mood, low energy. It's all related to that what's called bioenergetics, and mitochondria are at the heart of it.
So what are some common signs of poor mitochondrial health related to brain function? And Sean, do these actually get worse with age?
They do, actually, because it's all related to something called oxidative stress. And I know in Wellness Wednesdays you've discussed this before, but oxidative stress, that damage from those free radicals, that's happening at the mitochondrial level. That's literally, that oxidative stress is literally damaging, ripping holes in, degrading the mitochondrial membranes, the mitochondrial DNA, and that causes the mitochondria to, number one, malfunction and produce less and less energy, and at the same time produce more and more of that free radical damage, and that leads to inflammation, which leads to malfunction. So a common sign of low mitochondrial energy and poor efficiency is lack of mental clarity, with difficulty focusing, forgetfulness. It's a direct result of the diminished mitochondrial function. The brain cells just don't get enough energy to perform optimally. And as we age, this just gets worse because we're exposed to more and more those free radicals, more and more of the environmental toxins. Most older people are on medications. And just so you know, almost every single medication is a mitochondrial toxin. In some way, it damages your mitochondria. It's toxic to your mitochondria. It's how it works. And this compounding mitochondrial damage from toxins, oxidative stress, inefficiency is just going to contribute to that gradual decrease in your cognitive abilities. And in fact, it actually can lead to things like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. And there's a lot of research. Basically every condition that you can think of, especially neurodegenerative conditions, they can be boiled down to a condition of mitochondrial dysfunction.
Wow. Honestly, I think this is such an important topic, and it really is. I mean, we talked about at the beginning, getting to root cause and down to the basics rather than just medicating a symptom. What at the core is the problem? And this is exciting information. So, are there specific nutrients or foods that support mitochondrial health for the brain? And can improving mitochondrial health reverse brain aging or cognitive decline?
My goodness, there are definitely some nutrients that your mitochondria absolutely love, and a couple of them, alpha lipoic acid and L-carnitine, and these have been shown to actually alleviate some of the enzymatic things that happens, because there's a lot of enzymatic reactions that occur in the mitochondria. As you can imagine, enzymes are cofactors for all these processes, including moving the electrons across the mitochondrial membrane. So alpha lipoic acid and L-carnitine are a couple of big ones. NAD is actually a really key nutrient because it's a molecule that helps move the electrons. It's actually involved in the exchange of electrons across that mitochondrial membrane in something called the electron transport chain that actually ends up making abundant ATP. Omega-3 fatty acids actually make up the mitochondrial membranes that the electrons go across. And there's a special type that is on the inner mitochondrial membrane. And then, of course, B vitamins, because these actually help in the reactions. They're very important for energy metabolism, and then basic antioxidants like quercetin. And these actually the L-theanine, the alpha lipoic acid, the L-carnitine, the quercetin, and some other things are all in something that we have that is a mitochondrial supplement. We call it a mitochondrial activator called NRF1. These antioxidants actually they help mitochondrial health in a couple of ways, just by putting out that free radical fire. But they're specific to the mitochondria. So the other thing that's not a supplement is exercise. Exercise actually induces something called mitochondrial biogenesis. And making new healthy mitochondria are important because when your mitochondria are damaged to a certain degree, they kind of self-destruct and they recycle the parts. And now your brain cells are operating with fewer mitochondria, which definitely helps make you feel even more tired and foggy. We want to increase mitochondrial biogenesis and actually increase mitochondrial number to combat the loss of mitochondria from that exposure to free radicals and also those environmental toxins.
It's so true. And I think we'd be remiss in this conversation. And we talk about this every week on Wellness Wednesday, but other things too that would be key would be sleep, making sure that you're getting plenty of sleep. That's where our body repairs itself, but also diet. I think avoiding those processed foods. And I know, alcohol is also one of those toxins that is a real negative to the mitochondria. So there's certainly things rather than just a supplemental approach, but lifestyle. I love that, Sean. Exercise being one of those key things too. I love that. So let me ask you, this is kind of a twofold question, but what happens when mitochondria become damaged? And then what role does mitochondrial biogenesis play in maintaining brain health, and how can we stimulate it?
All right. Well, okay. So again, when the mitochondria become damaged, they become less efficient at two things happen. They become less efficient at making energy, which is a problem. Going to produce less energy. You're going to have less brain energy. You're going to have, brain fog and maybe a depressed mood. But they are also, because of the damage, they're going to be leaky, and they're going to release more pollutants, more free radicals, more of those reactive oxygen species that are going to continue to do more damage. So it's a self-perpetuating cycle. A damaged mitochondria begets more damaged mitochondria because it's producing so many harmful chemicals and harmful molecules. So your brain and body have a way of dealing with these damaged mitochondria through a process called mitophagy. You might have heard of autophagy, which happens when you do fasting. It's kind of like where the damaged parts of the mitochondria or the cell, in the case of autophagy, are identified, they're isolated, they're broken down, and then they're recycled to make new healthy mitochondria. And that helps prevent that accumulation of dysfunctional mitochondria. Because if you can imagine, if you got to build up a broken mitochondria in your cells, it's going to get in the way of things. It's going to lead to cellular damage and poor neuronal connections and misfiring and everything else. So once you've got this going on, now your brain is trying to deal with all of the metabolic demands with fewer mitochondria. So enter mitochondrial biogenesis. That's the process of creating new mitochondria. And it's so important. It's a compensatory mechanism. It helps maintain that healthy mitochondrial population. And it's so important because the brain is so high energy. Sorry for the dogs, of course. A couple of things regulate this mitochondrial biogenesis. One is called it's a protein called PGC1 alpha. It's like the regulator of mitochondrial biogenesis and function. It coordinates the expression of genes that are involved in energy metabolism. This PGC1 alpha is influenced by factors like exercise, cold exposure, like you said, sleep, dietary components like resveratrol and coenzyme Q10, which is another thing I didn't mention in nutrients. Then there's also an overarching regulatory pathway called NRF1 that is called nuclear respiratory factor. And they're not talking about breathing respiratory, they're talking about nuclear respiration or mitochondrial respiration, which is using the oxygen inside the mitochondria to create ATP. And that NRF1 is a key transcription factor that it regulates the genes that are actually responsible for mitochondrial biogenesis and repair. So that NRF1 creates new healthy mitochondria, and that's really what it's all about.
That is amazing. And that's a lot of information in there. But what exactly, I know we're talking a bit of science tonight, but what exactly does NRF1 stand for?
Nuclear respiratory factor 1.
That's what it is. Okay.
It's a neurotransmitter that's involved in that cellular respiration or electron transport, oxidative phosphorylation.
Okay, amazing. So are there any activators that can help maintain and improve mitochondria health? And if there are, will you mention them? Tell us, because we've got our chat blowing up. Like, what are you recommending, Sean? Let's get to that.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, what is the excuse me? What is the thing that's damaging the mitochondria? It's oxidative stress. So number one, reducing that oxidative stress with the protanum NRF2. Number two, we want to encourage mitochondrial biogenesis by activating that NRF1 path, that NRF1 transcription factor. It also happens to have those key nutrients that quercetin, that coenzyme Q10, that alpha lipoic acid, that L-carnitine. All those things are in there in just the right dosages that turn on that NRF1 pathway. Then, of course, because the mitochondria are made up of, well, first of all, before I go there, the other activator I would recommend is NAD, because NAD is right there in the middle of the mitochondria, going from NAD to NADH, across the mitochondrial membrane, that's generating ATP. Without NAD, your mitochondria wouldn't be able to make ATP. critical. So the three protandums. The other thing is omegas, omega-3, sorry, because the husband always chooses to come home during a Zoom. Omega-3s because they're what make up the mitochondrial membrane. So those are the primary four. I mean, Axio has the B vitamins. It also has more quercetin, helps you focus and concentrate. But specifically for mitochondria, the three protandum, trisynergizer, and omega plus.
Oh, honestly, that I can tell you this. So, I started taking the activators 8 years ago, and I started with just the Nerf 2. And it was a few years after that that they developed the NRF1. So, layering the NRF1 on top of the NRF2, I call it the evolution of activation in my body. I could feel the difference. It made a difference. So, if you're listening and you're only taking Protandim NRF2, you're missing out. I'm just telling you, you're missing out. And that's what you're sharing today. So we're talking about the NRF1 increasing that mitochondria and cleaning up the mitochondria factor in your body. So when you couple them, someone asked in the chat, why the two together, especially like what happens when you combine that NRF1, NRF2, and the NAD? Can you maybe just talk about the difference of just taking NRF2 by itself, then you add NRF1, then the NAD? What synergy happens when you add the three together?
Well, okay, so I mean, we can talk about the results of, which genes get activated. So NRF2 activates genes that are responsible for reducing oxidative stress, increasing your antioxidant enzymes and proteins. But doing the process of detox, removing those toxins, phase 2 liver detox, all of that requires energy. And that's where your mitochondria come in. And so when you increase the number of healthy mitochondria doing the work of detox, naturally you would expect it to be synergistic. And in fact, it is, because when you take NRF2 with the NRF1, that activation of PGC1 alpha that I talked about, the activation of the NRF1 pathway itself, that's increased just because NRF2 is there, because NRF2 is removing all of that oxidative stress. And vice versa, when you add NRF1 to the NRF2, the activation of hemoxygenase 1 and all of the other glutathione and all those things is increased, because now you've got the cellular energy to actually do that. And NAD, the same thing. NAD activates the enzymes that make new NAD and also recycle NAD from old autophagies results. You basically have an old NAD that's just kind of a molecule that's kind of, we're done, and we just recycle it for the parts, and the enzymes are responsible for making new NAD. And since NAD is kind of the fuel for proteins that are the CEO of the cell, it would make sense that this whole process of detoxing and providing energy to detox would work better if there's a commander going, go here, do this. So the three together are actually helping each other work even better by a factor of 18.
That's amazing. That is amazing. 18, and you feel the difference. I'm here to testify it, and I think anybody that has experienced it would say the same. Oh my goodness. Well, we've talked about NRF2, we've talked about and highlighted Protandim NRF1. We've talked about Protandim NAD. We've talked about Omega Plus and all of those. Honestly, that is a daily regimen in my household and every loved one that I have. That I feel it's that important. And I know you do too, Sean. Axio as well, we mentioned that as a very beneficial thing. Let me ask one final product. I know it's been mentioned a few times, collagen playing into that brain health. Does that play anywhere in the mitochondrial conversation? We know it helps with brain health. What's your thought?
Well, I don't know if it directly impacts the mitochondria per se, as far as collagen protein is not involved in that pathway. But when you take in with the NRF2, a series of proteins are activated that actually decrease hyperactive inflammatory response. One of the inflammatory kind of hyperactive immune response chemicals is reduced by about 97%. So it together reducing that hyperactive inflammatory boy who cried wolf cellular chaos phenomenon could definitely help with the whole process of mitochondrial biogenesis, because you don't want that happening with a background of inflammation, because that's just going to gum up the works. You want to have balanced inflammatory response in order to optimize all of these processes.
Beautifully said. So we're talking about the activated liquid collagen, which is just second to none. It's something we launched about 18 months ago, and it is extraordinary. If you have not tried it, highly recommend. But Sean, this has been an amazing conversation, and we're wrapping this up. But as we wrap this up, any final thoughts that you would like to leave with our listeners tonight?
Well, again, just remember everything is about energy, and you want to preserve that flow of energy in your cells. It's all about your body being able to take the food that you eat, the air that you breathe, and convert it into energy to allow you to do everything from think to digest to pump blood to write a dissertation to run a marathon. It's all so important, and you've got to guard your body's energy. You've got to really consciously reduce the number of toxins that you're introducing. Everything, it seems like everything you grab, put in your mouth is trying to kill you. You just got to really, really be careful and try to avoid toxins in your cleaning products. Try to avoid toxins in the drinks that you drink and the food that you eat. And certainly activate your own God-given protective pathways as much as possible.
Beautifully said. I couldn't agree more. And it's amazing that we have these tools available. Feeling better is absolutely what we're all after, and in having a better quality of life, not just longevity, but having a better quality of life. And so I thank you for your time, Sean, being here tonight and sharing your knowledge. And I thank every one of you for joining us. And I encourage you, please get back to the person that invited you to this tonight if you have any further questions. And just thank you so much for being here. And again, Happy New Year, everyone. Join us again next week as we talk about another amazing topic on Wellness Wednesday. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone. And
Thank
thanks
you,
again,
Mary.
Sean.
Bye.
You bet. Bye bye.
So long. Happy New Year.